Sometimes the people who respect you the most are the least likely to say it. Not because they don't admire you, not because they don't notice you, but because genuine respect creates a strange kind of tension inside people. The more someone values you, the more careful they become around you. And that's where most people get confused. They expect respect to look obvious: warm compliments, constant praise, clear signs of approval. But real respect often hides itself behind behaviors that seem unrelated. Sometimes it even disguises itself as distance. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How many people have respected you without you ever realizing it? How many interactions have you misunderstood because you were looking for admiration while missing something much deeper? Most people never realize there is a major difference between being liked and being respected. People like those who make them feel comfortable. People respect those who make them think. Those are not always the same individuals. In fact, some of the most respected people in a room are not the loudest, funniest, or most popular. They are often the people whose presence subtly changes the behavior of everyone around them. And once you learn to recognize the hidden signs, you'll start seeing them everywhere. In conversations, in friendships, at work, in relationships, even in the people who rarely express emotion at all. Because respect leaves fingerprints, and the first sign appears in a place most people overlook. When someone respects you, they become unusually aware of your opinion, not necessarily because they seek your approval. The deeper truth is that your perspective begins to matter to them. Imagine a workplace meeting. Several people are talking. Ideas are being thrown around. Then one person shares a suggestion. Suddenly, another coworker glances toward you, just briefly, almost instinctively. They're not checking whether you agree, they're checking whether you noticed, whether your reaction confirms something. Very few people notice this behavior, but it reveals a hidden psychological reality. When someone respects your judgment, your opinion becomes a reference point inside their mind. You become someone whose perspective carries weight. And what's fascinating is that this often happens unconsciously. They may not even realize they're doing it. But here's where it gets interesting. The stronger the respect, the less likely they are to openly admit how much influence your opinion has. Why? Because respect creates vulnerability. The moment someone acknowledges that your view matters deeply, they reveal that you affect them. And many people instinctively hide that, especially proud people, especially independent people, especially people who want to appear emotionally self-sufficient. So instead of telling you directly, they reveal it through behavior. And that's only the first layer. The next sign is even more revealing. When someone truly respects you, they listen differently. Most people hear words. Respectful people listen for meaning. Think about the average conversation. Someone is speaking, the other person is simply waiting for their turn, preparing a response, thinking about themselves. The interaction feels normal. But when respect enters the equation, something changes. The listener becomes genuinely attentive. They remember details you forgot mentioning. They reference conversations from months ago. They recall specific opinions, tiny preferences, random stories, small observations. Not because they have exceptional memory, because attention follows value. The human mind naturally remembers what it considers important, and respect quietly increases importance. A friend remembers a passing comment you made 6 months earlier. A coworker recalls an idea you casually mentioned during lunch. A partner remembers something you thought nobody noticed. These moments seem insignificant, yet they reveal enormous psychological information. People protect what they value, and they remember what they respect. But the strange part is that many viewers have experienced the opposite side of this phenomenon. They've been in relationships where they repeated themselves endlessly, where nobody remembered, nobody listened, nobody paid attention. That feeling hurts, Because deep down we understand something powerful. Attention is emotional currency, and respect determines where much of that currency goes. Yet most people miss an even stronger sign, a sign that often gets mistaken for criticism. When someone respects you, they challenge you differently. This surprises many people because we assume respect always looks agreeable, supportive, pleasant, encouraging. But real respect is rarely that simple. Imagine two employees. One is constantly praised. Everything they do receives approval. The other is questioned, challenged, pushed toward higher standards. At first glance, it seems obvious who is more respected, but that's not actually how psychology works. People often challenge individuals they believe are capable of more. The reason is hidden beneath the surface. Expectations reveal value. When someone expects little from you, they rarely invest effort into your growth. When they expect much more, they engage differently. A mentor corrects you because they see potential. A respected colleague debates your ideas because they take them seriously. A friend refuses to let you sabotage yourself because they know you're capable of better. The challenge itself becomes evidence. Not always, not in every situation, but far more often than people realize. And this creates one of the biggest misunderstandings in human relationships. Many people mistake respect for agreement. The two are not identical. Someone can agree with you and secretly dismiss you. Someone can disagree with you and deeply respect you. This changes everything. Because once you understand that distinction, countless interactions begin making sense. Yet something even deeper happens when respect reaches a higher level. People start becoming careful around you. Not fearful, careful. There's a difference. Fear comes from threat. Respect comes from significance. Imagine someone making jokes around friends. They speak freely, without much thought. Then you enter the conversation. Suddenly they choose their words more carefully. Not because they're intimidated, because they don't want to appear careless in front of you. Your perception matters. And when perception matters, behavior changes. This dynamic appears everywhere. In families, in dating, in workplaces, on social media. People who respect you often think longer before responding. They become more thoughtful, more deliberate, more aware. Most people never realize what they're seeing. They assume the person is distant, reserved, even cold. But sometimes the reality is exactly the opposite. Sometimes that restraint is respect. Carl Jung observed that much of human behavior originates beneath conscious awareness. People often act out motivations they cannot fully explain. Respect is one of those motivations. It quietly shapes behavior long before words catch up. And that leads directly into another sign that reveals something surprising about human nature. When someone respects you, they become uncomfortable speaking negatively about you behind your back. Not because they're morally perfect, not because they're incapable of gossip, but because criticism creates internal conflict. The mind struggles to reduce people it genuinely respects. This is where things become revealing. Pay attention to what happens when your name enters a conversation you're not present for. The people who merely like you may stay silent. The people who respect you often defend you. Not dramatically, not publicly, not for attention, quietly, almost automatically. Someone questions your intentions. They clarify. Someone misrepresents your actions. They correct the story. Someone minimizes your contribution. They restore context. Most viewers underestimate how rare this behavior actually is, because defending someone when they're absent offers no social reward. No applause, no recognition, no credit. The action comes from somewhere deeper, and that deeper place reveals respect. But the next sign is perhaps the most misunderstood of all. In fact, many people interpret it as rejection. which is exactly why it goes unnoticed. When someone genuinely respects you, there are moments when they create distance. Not because they dislike you, not because they want to leave, not because you've done something wrong. The real reason is far more surprising, and once you understand it, you'll start looking at certain relationships in an entirely different way. Because sometimes, distance is not created by a lack of respect. Sometimes it's created by too much of it. And what that means about human psychology is something most people spend their entire lives misunderstanding. Because respect doesn't only pull people closer. Sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes it creates hesitation, and that's where the real psychology begins. Think about a person who genuinely values your opinion, a person who sees qualities in you that they admire, a person who considers you competent, intelligent, emotionally strong, or unusually self-aware. Most people assume such a person would naturally become more expressive, more open, more available. Yet reality is often stranger. The more significant someone becomes in our minds, the more emotionally exposed we feel around them. Every interaction carries greater weight. Every conversation feels more meaningful. Every impression feels more important. That's when something unexpected happens. People begin managing themselves. They think before speaking. They second-guess messages. They worry about saying the wrong thing. And sometimes they withdraw temporarily. Not because they don't care, because they care more than they intended. You've probably seen this without recognizing it. A co-worker who suddenly becomes formal around you. A friend who seems unusually careful when discussing sensitive topics. A person you're dating who occasionally pulls back after moments of genuine connection. At first, these behaviors appear contradictory. If they value you, why become more distant? The answer is more uncomfortable than most expect. Respect increases emotional risk. The more someone values your perception, the more they become aware of losing it. And awareness changes behavior. This is one reason highly respected people often experience a strange paradox. Many assume their confidence protects them from social tension. In reality, confidence often attracts it. Because people become more conscious around individuals whose judgment they value. Yet there is another sign that reveals even deeper respect. One that almost nobody notices. When someone respects you, they begin comparing themselves to you. Not necessarily in a jealous way, not necessarily in a competitive way, but in a reflective way. Your behavior becomes a mirror, and mirrors can be uncomfortable. Imagine a friend watching how calmly you handle conflict, a co-worker observing your discipline, a family member noticing your emotional control. You never mention it, you never preach, you never tell them what to do. Yet your behavior silently forces comparison, and comparison awakens self-awareness. This is why respected individuals often trigger unexpected reactions: admiration, distance, inspiration, defensiveness, sometimes all at once. The strange part is that people rarely react to who you are. They react to what your presence reveals about themselves. Jung called this projection. People encounter qualities they have ignored, suppressed, or secretly desired within themselves. Then they experience emotions they struggle to explain. A person may respect your boundaries because they lack their own, respect your confidence because they doubt themselves, respect your authenticity because they've spent years hiding behind a persona. What they admire in you often points towards something unfinished within them, and that creates tension. Because respect is not always comfortable. Sometimes respect forces growth, and growth challenges the ego. This is why highly respected people are often misunderstood, not because they're unclear, because they trigger reflection, and reflection can be unsettling. But here's where it gets even more revealing. One of the strongest signs of respect appears when opportunities arise. Watch what people do when something important is at stake: a project, A decision, a responsibility, a difficult conversation, a crisis. Who do they call?
Who do they consult? Who do they trust?
Words can be manipulated. Behavior rarely can. When pressure enters a situation, priorities become visible. A manager seeks your input before making a major decision. A friend calls you during a personal crisis. A family member asks for your perspective when facing uncertainty. These moments expose something powerful. Trust is often respect in action. People place responsibility in the hands of those they genuinely respect. Not because they expect perfection, because they believe in judgment. And judgment is one of the highest forms of social value. Most people never realize this. They focus on compliments, recognition, praise. But respect reveals itself most clearly through responsibility. People trust what they respect and avoid relying on what they don't. Yet there is still one final sign, the deepest sign, the one that explains all the others. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. When someone truly respects you, they allow your words to change them. Not immediately, not dramatically, not always visibly, but over time. Your perspective enters their thinking. Your insights remain with them after conversations end. Your influence continues long after you've left the room. This is far rarer than most imagine, because changing one's mind is difficult. Changing behavior is even harder. The ego naturally protects itself. It resists influence, defends existing beliefs, maintains familiar patterns. That's why genuine influence is such a powerful indicator of respect. People may listen to hundreds of voices, but they only internalize a few. Think about the individuals who have shaped your life. Teachers, friends, partners, mentors, family members, perhaps even strangers. What made them memorable? Often it wasn't charisma, it wasn't popularity, it wasn't status, it was impact. Something they said remained with you. Something they did altered your perspective. Something about them quietly changed your direction. That is respect at its highest form. Not admiration from a distance. Transformation. And this brings us back to the mystery from the beginning. Why do so many people fail to recognize respect when it's present? Because they're looking for the wrong signals. They look for praise, attention, validation, approval. Yet respect often speaks a different language. It appears in careful listening, thoughtful disagreement, silent defense, meaningful trust, measured distance, elevated standards, lasting influence. The irony is that some of the people who praise you the loudest may not respect you at all, and some of the people who rarely express admiration may hold you in the highest regard. This is why human behavior can seem so confusing. We judge intentions by words, while psychology reveals itself through patterns. The deeper truth is that respect is rarely announced. It is demonstrated, quietly, repeatedly, often indirectly, and sometimes the strongest evidence appears when nobody is watching. A conversation you're not present for, a decision made in private, a memory someone carries long after you've forgotten the moment yourself. Those are the places where genuine respect lives, not on display, not performing for an audience, not seeking recognition, simply existing beneath the surface. And perhaps that's the most fascinating lesson of all. The people who truly respect you may never say it. They may never compliment you. They may never openly acknowledge the influence you have on them. Yet their behavior tells the story. In the way they listen, in the way they remember, in the way they defend, in the way they trust, in the way they quietly adjust themselves around your presence. Because respect is not measured by what people say when you're standing in front of them. It's measured by what remains after you've left. And once you understand that, You'll begin noticing something most people spend years missing. The deepest forms of respect are often invisible, not because they aren't real, but because the most powerful human emotions rarely need an announcement. They reveal themselves through patterns, and patterns never lie.